Learning how to enlarge a drawing to scale using a grid makes enlarging a picture so easy. We're just going to enlarge this little picture of Winnie the Pooh onto our paper using a ruler and a pencil to begin with. So the main thing to think about here is our proportions. If I'm going to make this, let's say 8 by 10 on here, then this needs to be 4 by 5. So 4 inches by 5 inches will make doubled 8 inches by 10 inches. And I can continue to enlarge that as many times as I want. So for instance, if I make this 4 inches by 5 inches, I could also multiply that by 3, make it 12 inches by 15 inches large, or 16 by 20, multiplying both of those numbers by 4, or by 5, 20 by 25, or even 24 by 30 or larger. So I could increase this and put it on either paper or a canvas or even a big poster board if I'd like. So let's make a grid on our drawing first. How about that? I'm going to make this 4 inches by 5 inches, and I'm going to put Winnie the Pooh right in the center. So 4 inches by 5 inches. I'm going to make my grid 4 inches wide and 5 inches tall. Okay, now I'm going to make half-inch increments all the way up and all the way over. And then when I enlarge it, I'll make each of the squares of my bigger paper 1 inch by 1 inch. And I'll show you how this works. It's slick as a whistle. So again, I'm going to make this grid over my original drawing, and I'm going to draw half-inch squares. And I want to make these as square as possible. A person could make an interesting design by making rectangles or other shapes on here and transferring those and letting it kind of distort. But I'm wanting to make this an exact replica. So I'm going to make half-inch squares on here and then double it on my next size paper to be 1 inch by 1 inch. Okay, then down, I'm going to make half-inch squares again. I'm going to make lines that are a half-inch apart all the way across. Now I could do this with a photograph. I could do this with a magazine picture. I could do this with one of my own drawings that I made small that I would like to enlarge. I'm going to number these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and I'm going to number them down with letters A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, and J, and then I can make each of these A1, A2, A3, A4, A5, and that's going to help me know which square to put my drawing in on my bigger paper. I'll do the exact same thing now on my larger paper. Then I'm going to transfer this drawing onto here using that grid. So I have drawn half-inch squares across here. I'm going to double that size on here and make 1 inch squares. So since it's an 8.5 inch wide piece of paper, I'm going to cut off a 1/4 inch on either side so that there's 8 inches in between here. And then I'm going to make 1 inch squares, and this is going to double the size of my picture, making them almost the full length of my page. And I'm not going to make these very dark because I'm going to need to erase these later. Okay, so I've turned my page this direction because I'm going to draw the lines now across. So since this page is 11 inches tall and I only need 10 inches to double this, I'm going to cut a 1/2 inch off each end of my paper, and then I'm going to move my ruler in between there, and that's going to be 10 inches tall. So I'm going to make marks at the 1 inch increments, and then repeat that on the other side. Now I'm going to connect those dots in between from here to here. Now this is going to be the same proportions, except this is smaller and this is larger. So let's number these across the same way we did our small picture. 8, and then we're going to put letters all the way down. A, B, C. Now these match. There's A1, A2, A3, A1, A2, A3. So we just take A1, A2, A3. I can find any square that way. E6 or H7. It reminds me of playing Battleship. So I'm going to copy whatever I see inside of the square over here onto the same square on my paper. So for instance, on Winnie the Pooh's ear, I'm not going to draw these little things in the background here, his Christopher Robin's foot or anything like that. I'm just going to draw Winnie the Pooh and transfer him over. So here there's just a tiny bit of his ear in B2. So I'm going to find B2 on here, B2, and I see there's just a little bit of line here from his ear. And on B3, I can see that line coming down. I'm going to make it look just the same as this square. All I'm looking at is this one square here and transferring it over here to look the same. There's a small little line that's the top of his head. It just looks like a little hill that goes up and down. And then his other ear is going to pop up over the top of that. Now I'm going to go to E4, and this little line barely goes down here. And that's all there is in that whole square. And there's nothing across this line. There's nothing across the top line. So now we're going to go down to line C, and we're going to see what's there. And we can see that this is C2. Let's transfer over to C2, and we're going to copy the same thing we see here into that square. That's all I have to think about in the whole drawing. Okay, in C3, there's a little bit of his ear that comes down, and that's it. C4, here's his little top, let's see, the top of his nose comes down slightly, then makes a little hump, comes back in and to the edge. That's all I'm thinking about is this square, adding a little eyebrow that's in the center top, which is in kind of a little bit of a curved teardrop right there, and his little eye, and there's going to be a little bit of his smile right here. Now we're going to come over to C5, and we're going to finish his nose. It comes up and down here on this square. And again, that's the only thing I'm thinking about is this square. And it makes kind of a bump. Comes around to the bottom, about halfway, a little less than halfway across, and his nose sits on the top of that. So any drawing can be drawn this way. You can even take a photograph and put it on your computer and make it into a line drawing if that makes it easier. Or you can outline the outside edge of your picture and then transfer the outside line, and it gives you kind of just an outline to work with on your paper. Okay, that's all there is in this line. I'm not going to do Kanga or Roo. So now I'm going to come down to D1. There's nothing of Winnie the Pooh there. D2, there's these little lines here. And I just copy what's in that square. Make it look just the same, best that I can. And then I move to the next square. and I draw what's in that square. And this is how we make it work. Then I don't have to figure out how to draw the whole thing. I just work with a little part of the drawing at a time. Bite-sized pieces. This line comes down to about right here. And if it's not perfect, it's going to be close enough to make it have the look of Winnie the Pooh. Stops about this far up on the square. I'm just increasing this in size. We've got Winnie the Pooh. So I'm just going to add a little bit of grass in here where I want to put it. He's just walking in the grass. What do you think? I think that really turned out well. It's not perfect, but I like it. So let's go over the lines of Winnie the Pooh with the black marker. So once I have my black line done, I can come back and I can erase all of the grid lines and erase any of the pencil line on here or any of the lettering that I've done so that I have a clean picture. And I can do this on my canvas or on my paper. So I'm going to use my big eraser for this. This is why I didn't want to make my lines very dark, so I can easily erase them with my big eraser. And there's our Winnie the Pooh that we have doubled in size from our color book. And again, I can make this larger as I want to. I could make my squares 2 inches by 2 inches or 4 inches by 4 inches and keep increasing this in size. I just have to remember to keep doubling, tripling, or quadrupling the size of this. This is 1/2 inch to begin with. So 1 inch is going to be twice as big. 2 inches is going to be even bigger. 3 inches by 3 inch squares on my larger paper or canvas will make it even larger. So it's going to be in proportion because I'm using the same number of squares both directions. Takes just a little bit of thinking to do that, but it's not hard. So now I have a large coloring sheet that I can color of Winnie the Pooh. Then we can have a little bit of fun coloring him. Learning how to enlarge a drawing to scale with a grid will really come in handy for your drawing. For more drawing tutorials, come on over to welcometonanas.com and join the fun.